right, we got breaking news. The president has just wrapped up an interview with our own Kate Baldwin. She's one of the co-anchors of CNN's New Day. Kate is here in the Situation Room. Kate, welcome back. This was a good opportunity on this day after the president made a major announcement about sending military advisors to Iraq for you to follow up.
It was an important moment to get some clarity on some of the details that we still don't know about what the administration is going to do. I began the interview, Wolf, by asking him about the man really at the center of this, Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. And I asked him, and as you well know, just months ago, the president had commended the prime minister for ensuring a strong, inclusive, democratic Iraq. Well, we know none of that has happened since Maliki's been there. So why then does the president think that any fix can happen in Iraq if Maliki is still in power?
We gave Iraq the chance to have an inclusive democracy, to work across sectarian lines, to provide a better future for their children. And unfortunately, what we've seen is a breakdown of trust. There's no doubt that there has been a suspicion for quite some time now among Sunnis that they have no access to using the political process to deal with their grievances. And that is in part the reason why a better armed and larger number of Iraqi security forces melted away when an extremist group, ISIS, started rolling through the western portions of Iraq. So part of the task now is to see whether Iraqi leaders are prepared to rise above sectarian motivations, come together, compromise. If they can't, there's not going to be a military solution to this problem. There's no amount of American firepower that's going to be able to hold the country together, and I've made that very clear to Mr. Maliki and all the other leadership inside of Iraq.
But by going in to the country to support this Iraqi government, to support Iraqi forces now, there's a real risk that you will very well likely be seen as supporting the Shiite side. Isn't that inflaming the tensions further and thus doing exactly what ISIS wants?
Yeah, actually not, because the terms in which we're willing to go in as advisors initially is to do an assessment of, do they still have a functioning chain of command, and is their military still capable, particularly in some of the western and northwestern regions of the country. But what we've also said is that in a joint operations center that we might set up, in any advising that we may do, if we don't see Sunni, Shia, and Kurd representation in the military command structure, if we don't see Sunni, Shia, and Kurd political support for what we're doing, then we won't do it. The terms in which we send any advisors would be dependent on us seeing that within the military and within the political structure that there remains a commitment to a unified and inclusive Iraqi government and armed forces.
No matter what happens in Iraq, can you realistically protect the national security interests of the United States without also going into Syria, where this threat emanated from?
I think it's important for us to distinguish between a counterterrorism effort that is ongoing, dealing with al-Qaeda and the remnants that still exist in the Fatah, creating platforms, taking targeted strikes where necessary, gathering intelligence. All that work has to be done, would have to be done even if the crisis in Iraq wasn't occurring. And there's no doubt that the problem in Syria is one that we've been paying a lot of attention to over the last couple of years, as you see jihadists coming in from Europe and as far as Australia to get trained and then going back into their home countries. This is something that we've been deeply concerned about. Part of the reason we've been supporting a moderate opposition effort in Syria is to make sure that there are forces that are countering some of the gains that some of these extremist organizations have made inside of Syria. But that's different from whether we have the capacity, for example, to send our own troops in to Syria. That's different from some of the decisions that we may we are making with respect to how do we pull Iraq together.
Finally, do you really believe in your gut that this change can happen, that they can unify in Iraq?
I think we'll know soon enough. They don't have a lot of time. There's a timetable that is in place under their constitution. The good news is that so far, at least, all the parties have said that we want to abide by the Constitution. You had the preeminent Shia leader inside of Iraq, Grand Ayatollah Sistani, saying we need to follow the constitutional order and form a government quickly. So they have the chance. But ultimately, what I think the vast majority of Americans understand is that we can't do it for them. And we certainly can't redeploy tens of thousands of U.S. troops to try to keep a lid on a problem if the people themselves don't want to solve it.
Kate, good interview. I know that's just part of it. The full interview is going to run Monday morning on New Day, but I didn't get the sense when you asked him about his gut instinct, he's very upbeat that this is going to work out. It doesn't sound like he's got a whole lot of confidence in the Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki.
I totally agree with you. I think at best you can say he's skeptical, and let's be honest, for good reason. Political reconciliation in the country has escaped that country forever, for so long. And he said, we don't have a lot of time. And he even said yesterday in announcing what was going to happen, there is too much mistrust, there is too much suspicion among Iraqis. How is that going to change overnight with the same man in power?
Because he must be so frustrated. Last November, you and I have discussed this. Nouri al-Maliki came to Washington, went to the White House, sat with the president in the Oval Office, and there were glowing comments from the president how things were moving in the right direction.
Exactly right.
Nouri al-Maliki was doing the right thing. And all of a sudden, a few months later, we see this disaster that has unfolded.
And one interesting detail that I had not yet heard is when I said that, aren't you going to be seen as supporting one side or the other? And he said no. When he was talking about even if they create these joint operations centers, that they are going to need to see, he says, Sunni representation, Shia representation, and Kurdish representation if they are going to get any assistance from the United States. I have not heard that yet. That sounds difficult to pull off in itself. That goes into the wait-and-see category if that's possible, but I found that interesting. But that is part of the interview. We also had really a fascinating conversation, Wolf, really interesting, talking about domestic issues, what families are facing on a daily basis, how to balance work and life and make it work. They're having a summit. It's a working family summit. That's on Monday. He gets really personal, gets really interesting, even offers a little bit of advice for first-time parents. So it's an interesting conversation.
Like you and Michael getting ready for becoming first-time parents. Monday morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., New Day. The full interview will air, and of course, we will be watching. As I watch it every day.
Every day. You're my biggest fan.
All right. Thanks, Kate. Good to have you back in Washington. Wolf. Just ahead, a key critic of the Bush administration's handling of Iraq weighs in on President Obama's handling of the current crisis and the deployment of U.S. military advisors.